of His Excellency, President of the Republic of Ghana, President John Agyekum Kufuor. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
John Agyekum Kufuor was born 80 years ago in 1938. He was born into royalty, into the 400-year-old Ashanti Kingdom in Kumasi in Ghana. Mr. Kufuor studied at Prempeh College and later at the University of Oxford, where he earned a bachelor's in political science, philosophy and economics. He later studied for the bar and was called to Lincoln's Inn before he returned to Ghana to take up his first job as KCC chairman. KCC meaning Kumasi City Council, the same as today's mayor of Kumasi. As faith and interest would have it, Mr. Kufuor joined politics and became a member of the Consultative Assembly that drew up the Second Republican Constitution in 1979. J. Kufuor was elected as a member of parliament under that constitution and became deputy foreign minister at the age of 29. Here, Mr. Kufuor is seen in 1969 welcoming presidential guests to the inauguration of Prime Minister Kofi Abrefa-Busia. J.A. Kufuor's political career was, however, truncated by a coup d'etat led by this man, General Kutu Achampong.
As you go home, remember that the revolution continues unabated.
Politics returned in 1979, and once again, Kufuor was active. He won a parliamentary seat for the Popular Front Party in Ashanti. Here is Mr. Kufuor's own account of 1979.
The campaign was a bit mad because the executions and the baying for blood and those things were so new and strange, traumatic to Ghana.
Another coup d'etat ended the Third Republican Constitution. Mr. Kufuor retired to private business until politics returned in the late 1980s, culminating in the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution. Kufuor, the politician, was back in the saddle, and in 1996 he was elected for the first time as the leader of his party, the New Patriotic Party. Here is Ghana Television announcing the story to Ghanaians the day after Kufuor was elected.
Mr. J.A. Kufuor was elected presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party at a National Delegates Congress of the party held in Accra yesterday. He polled 1,034 votes. Professor Albert Edubuahen, who won the candidacy in 1992, polled 711 votes, while Mr. J.H. Mensah, a minister in the Second Republic, had 110 votes. Dr. Jones Oforiatta, a deputy minister in the Second Republic, had 69 votes, while Dr. Kwame Safo-Adu, also a former minister, had 42 votes, with Dr. Janice Selby, a medical practitioner, trailing with 24 votes. In all, 1,997 out of the 2,000 candidates voted, while 7 voting cards were rejected.
The Congress started off without Mr. J.A. Kufuor, one of the aspirants. When he did come, the chairman of the party, Mr. Peter Ala Ajete, was delivering his speech.
What is important, ladies and gentlemen, is that at the end of the day, when one person emerges as our presidential flag bearer, all of us, in truth and honesty, to gird our loins and without denying or withholding anything from such a flag bearer, support him and back him to the hilt so that he will be accepted not just by our party, but what is more important, by the country at large. Out of the valid votes cast, Dr. Dan Selby had 24 votes, which comes to 1.2%. 1.2% of the valid votes cast. Dr. Safo-Adu had 42 votes, and that amounts to 2.1 of the valid votes. Then Dr. Jones Oferata had 69 votes. That is 3.5%. Then Mr. J.H. Mensah had 110 votes, which is 5.5% of the valid votes. Professor Dubuahi had 711, and that is 35.7%. Mr. J. Kufuor had 1,034.
The losing candidates first pledged their support to the winner, Mr. J.A. Kufuor.
Naturally, I am disappointed, but I am not discouraged. Democracy is at work. The people have made their decision. We now have a leader of this party, and all of us who are committed NPP will put our energies and service at his disposal, work as hard as possible to ensure that victory comes to NPP 1996.
I would like to congratulate him and want to assure him that he can count on me. We should know that this is just a means to an end.
I would like to send my heartiest, warmest congratulations to Mr. J.A. Kufuor for winning so decisively and with such resounding results.
I am sure that with Mr. J. Kufuor holding the flag of the NPP for the coming presidential elections, and more importantly, since he believes he will try and foster this alliance and make sure that victory is won in December this year.
The contest is now history. And as is the tradition of our party, I resolve to work effectively with my colleague aspirants.
Being nominated as a presidential candidate is one thing, and winning the actual presidency is another task. How Mr. Kufuor is going to fulfill this ambition will depend on the Ghanaian electorate who go to the polls in December this year to exercise their franchise. As to whether he will be given the nod or not, well, time will tell. Francis Esu, GTV News, report.
Unfortunately, Mr. Kufuor lost the 1996 election, but his conduct on Inauguration Day won him many admirers within the Ghanaian body politic. Mr. Kufuor did the unthinkable. He mounted the stage to congratulate his rival, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings, in the full glare of the general public at Ghana's Independence Square. Ghana television commentator Edward Fachi was pleasantly surprised.
This is a very historic moment. J.A. Kufuor goes to congratulate President Rawlings, and there you see Mrs. Kufuor. President Rawlings shaking hands with Dr. Edward Mahama. And isn't this a wonderful moment? You can see Mr. J.A. Kufuor.
Destiny had fully come, and Mr. Kufuor and his team campaigned vigorously around the country. Eventually, he was elected as President of Ghana by a landslide in the second round of voting. Here is Mr. Kufuor in his first sessional address to Parliament, introduced to the House by the unforgettable Peter Ala Adjei, the then Speaker of Parliament.
In inviting His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana and Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces to deliver his message on the state of the nation.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, 5 weeks ago, on 7th January, year 2001, I appeared before you to swear the great oath to assume the high office of President of the Republic. Since then, I have been occupied with assembling the team which will assist me in the discharge of my mandate. With your cooperation, that task is now substantially complete.
Perhaps Mr. Kufuor is the first president under the Fourth Republic to have achieved major significant social interventions. The National Health Insurance Scheme was fully established in Ghana for the first time. The free compulsory universal basic education was implemented. The capitation grant and the school feeding program were all programs established under Mr. Kufuor. After serving 2 terms, the National Constitution debarred Mr. Kufuor from contesting. His party, the New Patriotic Party, therefore had to choose a new leader. On that auspicious occasion in 2007, Mr. Kufuor sounded significantly philosophical.
This party issues out of a tradition that is displaying attributes with a strong streak of spirituality. Seriously, there is an innate wisdom, shrewdness, and mystique that combine to hallmark this party as no ordinary party. It's truly a party of destiny. And I speak with some authority because I've come through the process and I know it.
Mr. Kufuor's desire to see his party and their candidate win the election was thwarted as Ghanaians voted for the rival party, the NDC. Mr. Kufuor showed high democratic skills in accepting the verdict when he addressed Parliament for the last time in 2008.
Naturally, Mr. Speaker, I had hoped that after my tenure, I would be succeeded by a candidate from my own political tradition. But as things stand, and have turned out, the Electoral Commissioner has declared that the electorate of Ghana has decided otherwise. As a Democrat, I acknowledge this declaration, and I therefore congratulate once more Professor John Evans Atta Mills on his election. Mr. Speaker, I should also congratulate the NPP flag bearer, Honorable Nana Dudankwa Akufo-Addo, who has acquitted himself with valor and the greatest sense of dignity in what is perhaps one of the closest and most keenly contested elections ever in the nation's political history.
In this interview, Mr. Kufuor explains why his party lost the election.
Unfortunately for us, we went into the 2008 election with some splits within our ranks. For instance, 18 of our members stood independent in parliamentary elections. Didn't help us. That didn't help us. If they hadn't done it, Nana Addo would have won one touch. Because even with all the splits on the count after the first round, he led by 49-point-something%. Needed only 23,000 votes to have won outrightly.
8 years later, Mr. Kufuor was back on the campaign trail to ensure that his party was re-elected to power. And as fate would have it, it must have been a proud moment for John Agyekum Kufuor while he watched his friend and contemporary, his former Attorney General and former Foreign Minister, take the oath of President, and his, Mr. Kufuor's former appointee at the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Mahamadou Bawumia, take the oath as Vice President. At this stage, the historians will begin to write The only small matter of a setback to Mr. Kufuor's administration will be the gruesome murder of the Yana Yakubu Andani under Mr. Kufuor's watch as President of Ghana and Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. All in all, history should judge Mr. Kufuor kindly. After all, he enhanced democracy and good governance. None of his appointees was found for corruption. He laid down the foundations of meaningful social interventions over an 8-year period. And he also set up the National Reconciliation Commission to reconcile our people towards a great future. And he accepted the narrowest of defeat even when his party did not win. This is what Mr. Kufuor said about himself in terms of legacy.
My abiding principle in life has always been to leave a place better than I found it.
In that regard, may we confer on John Agyekum Kufuor, the most distinguished constitutional statesman of Ghana. So, to J.A. Kufuor, we say, Aiko.